Welcome to this new business building. I'm Dean Georgette Chapman Phillips. Thanks for joining us as we follow the construction of the new Lehigh Business Building. Joining us today is Brent Stringfellow. Brent is the Associate Vice President of Facilities and is the University Architect. Welcome, Brent.
Thanks. Great to be here.
We had our beam signing last week, which means we've entered into a whole new phase of construction, the steel phase. I understand there's 2 steps in this phase, fabrication and erection. What are the considerations during fabrication?
Okay, so fabrication is where we make the pieces. So the great thing about steel, and you can see that right now, is how quickly it goes up because we make all the pieces sized to fit. So think like Legos or IKEA. All of it's pre-thought out. So the fabrication is really key. You have the basic shape of the steel, but then you go through where do the connections go, how do the bolts fit, and all that's pre-done.
Right.
So by the time it arrives on site, for the erection phase, everything just goes right up and everything's, hopefully, fits right into place. So theoretically things go pretty quickly because everything's cut to size already and everything works. Once it is in place, then when they're putting the steel up, they'll start assembling pieces, then they'll go through plumbing and leveling the structure to make sure everything's true and straight.
Right. I see a real difference this week from last week in that there aren't any other tradespeople on site.
Yep.
Why?
So that's safety. That is predominantly a safety issue. So when you're working on a steel building like this, these are obviously huge. These are pieces of metal that weigh tons. And so when you're swinging the steel, which is what they call it, we call these picks. So they'll come up on the truck, they'll pick a piece of steel, they'll swing it in, and then the steel workers are located into site. They'll get it tied into the beams, and then they'll make it a permanent connection. But all of that, of course, is like, this is big, heavy work. You don't want somebody wandering around if a pick goes wrong or something happens. So it's a safety issue. Once the steel's above a certain level and the work you'll start to see some other tradespeople return.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking around, and as always, I'm amazed. How much steel are we talking about here?
So steel we measure in tons. So this project has about 468 tons, which is a pretty significant amount. And then the steel arrives in different shapes, wide flange shapes, angles, and so forth. So it gets broken up into different pieces from there.
How does the decking work in this?
Okay, so you can see there's some decking over here, and that's what we call composite decking. So the way a structure like this works is you have the steel frame, then the decking goes across it, and the decking that you see there is not the floor. The floor will be a composite of that decking and then concrete that will be poured in after the decking's installed. And it's a composite not just in material, but that structurally it's how it works. So it's kind of like how rebar works inside of concrete. The composite decking works on the underside of the concrete, so it gives it extra strength. So the whole structure really ties together, and each piece is then engineered to build off of the strengths of the other.
That is fascinating to think about, the amount of engineering that takes place before it gets to the site. Mm-hmm. You know, what is the critical phase of this operation?
So I'm not sure if there would be any single one. I mean, it starts off with the design and then goes through what we call the submittal phase, where the engineering of the very specific pieces takes place. That all then goes through a process, then it's fabricated, then it's brought to site, and then you have everybody put it into place. So each one of those is critical unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the engineering has to be spot on,
Yes.
and then obviously the assembly has to be spot on. And that's how construction works. Not even just in steel, the whole project really comes down to that, which is this, from a line on paper to a finished building, is the amazing piece of construction.
Right. Well, for a project this size, if I'm remembering, it's about 74,000 square feet. How long will this phase of the construction take?
Well, we're looking at about probably plus or minus 8 weeks to get the steel piece in place.
Great. So what's next?
So what's next? A lot of things. So getting the frame in place opens up a whole another level of trades. Up to this point, it's been pretty simple. We've been digging the hole, we've been building foundations, we've been building the steel frame. Now we start to have different trades start to come on board. You'll start to have the concrete teams back because they'll be filling in the decks.
Okay.
With that starts to allow people to do work inside the frame of the building. The big focus will be what we call closing in, because with winter coming, You want to get the walls up on the building, keep the weather out,
Yes,
start to be able to heat the space, start to be able to put up the sheathing, the insulation, the masonry walls, the windows. At the same time, they'll start doing work on the inside that we call rough-in. So that's all the backbone of building systems. So think about MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing work. The big runs that start to go in, that starts fitting out. That's the rough-in. And then basically you start big and you start getting down to more and more detailed work as we move forward.
Right.
So it'll start to get very exciting once the frame's
Oh, I'm
complete.
already excited.
I mean, it's exciting now.
I'm already excited.
In terms of the different trades you'll see.
That is great. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. We'll see you next time for this new business building.